It's the OK Football Opposition Preview with me, Philip Macbeth C. Thank you for joining me today. Today, we're going to be talking with Matt from the Wednesday Till I Die podcast about our Saturday 3pm fixture at Kenilworth Road against Sheffield Wednesday. It's 19th versus 20th place, and we'll be sharing in our mutual misery about our recent performances against QPR. But first of all, let's talk a little bit about Luton Town. It's been a really positive week. We took 3 points off of Millwall away from home in the early kickoff. Ted and Mengi's cultured finish, curling it around a couple of Millwall defenders, was absolutely beautiful. It was divine for some Luton fans to see some joy on the faces of Luton Town players and to actually enjoy 3 points after a really hard fought out battle. We were brilliant. We were really, really clever. We put up with the battle. We put up with endless long balls into the box and ultimately ran away with big smiles on our faces away from the den. In other news as well, Doughty has put pen to paper on a new extension to his contract, which is absolutely wonderful. He's such an integral part of our team, and I'm so looking forward to seeing him play at Kenilworth Road, hopefully, until we go into the new stadium and beyond. So, anyway, back to the football. Here's what I had to say with Matt from the Wednesday Till I Die podcast. So, as promised, here we have Matt from the Wednesday Till I Die podcast. How are you doing this evening, Matt?
Yeah, I'm not too bad, Phil. Thank you. I've just about recovered from the weekend, so yeah, I'm all okay at the minute. Thank you.
Good. Well, I'm going to trigger your PTSD, but we can wallow in our own misery together because we had a very, very bad day with QPR a couple of weeks ago. So we've got a bit of a mutual misery going on at the minute. And I think anyone that follows the Championship will have seen possibly the lowest quality goal ever that you conceded, unfortunately, at the weekend. So how are you feeling after that? It must have been a tough one to take, because I think if it was 0-0, you would have probably been like, "Wow, we had the better of the game and we were all right." But the fact it was just the manner in which it happened. A draw can sometimes feel so heavy when it's in that manner.
Yeah, you're 100% right. I think the start to the season that we'd had, obviously, lots of people saw the Plymouth game where we were. I was convinced after that performance we wouldn't see a better one all season because we were outstanding on the day. As bad as Plymouth were, we were good. We then went up to Sunderland and got absolutely taught a lesson, really, beat 4-0. Leeds at home was always going to be a difficult one. Didn't really put up a fight in that. Then we had the really worrying issue of Millwall, who we went to and lost 3-0 and were never really in the game. QPR was, I think, a statement game from ourselves in terms of getting back to a little bit more about what I think fans expected of us based off the end of last season, because we were solid towards the end of last season, but critically we played in a sort of like a back five. We went back to that on Saturday, although we lined up with the ball with a 3 in midfield, and then when we were out of possession dropped into a back five. As you've summed it up perfectly in terms of if that game had finished on the 97th minute and it had finished 0-0, people would have been ruining the missed chances. But aside from that, realistically, when you score in the 94th minute, you have to hold the win and you have to hold on to the lead. And I think that really summed up our start to the season, really, because there was a lot of optimism surrounding Sheffield Wednesday. It doesn't take much for a Wednesday fan base to get carried away, but it was, I think, with the way we finished last year, the manager signing deals, we brought in 11 players of better quality than what we were doing last year. We seem to be riding really high, and then that game at QPR the game against QPR really summed it up, because it was just a deflating feeling at the end. You know, you have that real high, which is immediately then snatched away, and you brought right back down to earth. So yeah, it was frustrating on Saturday, but I didn't walk away from it thinking, oh my word, panic stations. Where, like, I walked out of Millwall and was absolutely fuming, really not sure where we were really going and heading for kind of like over the course of the season. But it was clear to see that players, coaching staff had really pulled together over the international break. And ultimately, QPR probably owed us one. We did the double over them last year with 2 really late goals at Hillsborough. They probably owed us one, so it's the rub of the green. But yeah, you are 100% right, Phil. It is the worst goal we will see in this division all year to concede.
Yeah. It's one of those ones where I think that I was thinking about our game at the weekend. And I was thinking about that. There's some serious parallels. I mean, we're 19th and 20th in the league. We're separated by 1 goal on goal difference. But obviously, I think, and this isn't meant to sound like I'm being nasty towards you, but I think we have different aspirations.
Oh,
I think that you said it yourself before we turned on the record button that you had us down to sort of to go up back into the Premier League, and that's what a lot of our fan base were hoping for, because the reality of it is that that's the expectations that our management and our club has set. So for us to be back down in 19th and have had the start we've had has been really, really tough. But we are where we are, and we're going to have to battle our way out like we did against Millwall at the weekend. So we're intrigued as to see how we respond as well at home, because the atmosphere against QPR turned really, really sour. I'll be honest with you. It's as bad a atmosphere as there's been at Kenilworth Road in quite some time. So I think that there's some reparations to do on both sides, from the fans' point of view as well as the team and the staff. So from your perspective, as much as I've just sort of rambled on a little bit there, what were your sort of expectations at the start of the season? Was it a case of consolidating in mid-table? Was it a case of a bit more lofty ambitions than that?
I think it depends which Sheffield Wednesday fan you speak to, because of a club starved of Premier League football for coming up on 25 years now, for a club that still classes itself as a Premier League club in everything but actual stature in terms of playing squad and all the rest of it, which gets more ridiculous year on year, that argument. I would suggest that anybody with a relative level of sense saw, once the kind of transfer window had shut and we had only spent £4 million on 11 players, 2.5 of which was spent on one player, realistically you can only be looking at mid-table. And that is down to the manager and the coaching staff, less so the actual playing squad, because I think the playing squad has some strengths, but I think actually the manager and our coaching staff is our real asset. I had us down for a mid-table finish. I still would put us anywhere between maybe 9th and 15th over the course of this season. That really hasn't changed, because I do believe that the manager and the players have shown that when their backs really do get up against the wall, they do all pull together. And that was one of the big kind of contributing factors in last year. You know, it was 14 games before we won last year. We were sitting on 2 points after 14 games last year, and going absolutely nowhere other than straight back through the trapdoor back into League One. Our form from October through until the end of the season would have had us finishing 8th. So it does show that this squad is capable of pulling it together and picking out results out the fire. I mean, you will know from spending time in the Championship as well. If you're not in that kind of top echelon of clubs and you're not in the rock bottom 3, 4 or 5, mid-table, it takes 2 wins and you finish 9th. 2 losses, you finish 14th, 15th. And I think that's pretty much what... I think when the dust settles on everything, every Sheffield Wednesday fan would take and would be quite happy with in regards to the level of investment. Saying that, there were several Sheffield Wednesday fans who had us finishing playoffs or above, and I just sat there and thought, that's not how this works anymore. That's not how modern football works anymore. It takes well-run clubs like yourself. It takes creative thinking. It takes player sales. It takes everybody pulling in the same direction. I mean, we were mentioning beforehand, like I watched Luton's trajectory from kind of like almost like a sideline view with a close friend of mine who's a Luton fan, and really marvelled at it, to be perfectly honest, in terms of going from like conference away days, all the way through to kind of like the playoff final, obviously against Coventry, and it's down to a really well-run club fundamentally, which is the exact opposite of what we are. So yeah, I've got us mid-table, but anywhere in between 9th and 14th at the minute.
It's difficult, isn't it? Because it's like you say, it's expectations as well. Like last year, the way that you were from October onwards, that obviously people are going to get excitable and they're going to think, well, hang on a minute, as long as we've got this manager in place, it doesn't really matter. We can do this. This will be absolutely fine. So, but it's nice to sort of speak to some realistic fans and understand that, no, in all seriousness, because some people, sometimes it is just blind support, and it's not always that way. So actually, to speak to someone that's got his eye on the ball sort of thing is quite refreshing. So thank you for giving that quite balanced answer on that. It's very, very refreshing, especially after I've taken so much abuse from Blades fans this weekend for my comments on their season and their game at the weekend. So it's quite nice to speak to a Wednesday fan.
I was going to say, Phil, I'll say this, Phil, because you can't. It's difficult arguing with idiots. So there you go.
Thanks, mate. Anyway, moving on that wonderful note. So I've noticed, obviously there's outwardly there's a few players that have stood out for Wednesday just purely because they've been around for quite some time now. And for me, I've wanted over a number of years for Luton to put in a bid for Josh Windass. But
Mm.
I saw that he's sort of been in and out of the team a little bit, and there
Yeah.
was, I think I'm right in thinking there was about 4 or 5 changes at the weekend. So,
Yeah.
I mean, what's your thoughts on how the weekend's going to go? Is it going to be a case of setting up as a come and try and break us down and hit us on the break, or do you think you'll be more ambitious than that? I mean, what formation are you thinking, and who do Luton fans need to be a bit wary of?
I'll give you the players to watch out for. I think at the moment our formation is difficult to predict, but I'll have a go at it. Players to watch out for, James Beadle in goal. I know you won't want to hear that for as a goalkeeper, as a player to watch out for when you're attacking that net. He is currently 19. He's on loan from Brighton. He is the England under-21 goalkeeper. He trained with the England first team during the last international break. I will be amazed if he is not Brighton's starting goalkeeper within the next year, 2 years.
Okay.
He is outstanding. He looks slightly unconventional in terms of he is all arms and legs, but he makes important saves and important times. Last year, up until when the January window, when James Beadle was brought in, he was on loan at Oxford. Brighton recalled him and sent him to us. I think we'd kept 5 clean sheets. He'd matched that in his first 8 games with a really porous and leaky defence in front of him, which gives you an indication of the quality of him. Going into the back line, scored his first goal for the club against Blackpool in the Carabao Cup, Deschamps Bernard. He is, at the minute, the best kept secret in the EFL, I am convinced, in terms of he's had a slow start to the season, granted, and he's not hit the heights of last year. He's a very competent, very talented centre-half who I think if he had a yard more pace would be playing higher than he is currently with us. We, as Sheffield Wednesday fans, I think we feel very lucky to have him, similar to we had Mark McGuinness, who's signed for yourselves, obviously, on loan previously, and we were desperate to get him back. I would say Deschamps Bernard is a similar type of ilk of a centre-half. Going into the midfield, obviously, if you've ever watched a game with us, you'll know of Barry Bannon. If you've ever watched a game on Sky where they can't stop talking about him, he kind of speaks for himself. I'll highlight 2 from the centre of the midfield in Shay Charles, who's on loan from Southampton, ex-Man City youth. He's on loan from us for a season. He's only played 2 games for us, but looks very composed and in an area that we were weak in terms of defensive midfield. Svante Ingelsson, who was August Player of the Month and now can't get back in the team. A centre midfielder brought in from Bundesliga's Vi. Really good, deep-lying midfielder who makes runs in behind strikers out into wider positions. Very bizarre, and I think is going to be, once the manager implements his style and system effectively on that team, I think what you'll start to see is him become a really pivotal player, and ultimately I think he's the successor to Barry Bannon at the moment in terms of what we have. Up front, Ike Ugbo is the player I would say who we will start with and probably is the one to watch, even though he's not hit the heights that he did last season. He came on loan to us in January from Troy. He was at Cardiff. Troy recalled him, sent him to us, and he scored 7 in the remaining games of the season and ultimately kept us up. We haven't found a way to get the ball to him yet. If we do and the ball falls to him in the box, I would back him to score. He needs 1-2 chances a game to score. We just don't create them at the minute. And then out wide, I would be shocked if he is dropped from it. This is a real left field one. Left winger Olaf Kubacki, who we brought in from the Polish second tier, who in his first season of professional football went from left wing and scored 19 goals and got a bag full of assists. He's not quick. He is very much, once he beats a player, they stay beaten. I would describe him as sort of like he's not lightning quick in terms of a winger, but once he beats a player, it's very rare that they recover on him. We're sort of starting to see little glimpses of him, and he's been introduced into the first team setup. So I would expect to see him keep his place, because against QPR, he was a real thorn in their side all afternoon. And I think with the strength that you've got in wing back positions, especially in in Alfie Doherty as well, I think realistically putting a pace merchant up against him, which we do have 2 of, I think is too easy in terms of it. He's going to have seen faster and better players out wide in the Premier League all of last season. And again, for me, I think he's a Premier League player, really, in terms of his quality. So I would like to see us try something a little bit different. You mentioned Josh Windass at the top. Josh Windass is, say, a real divisive figure at Sheffield Wednesday.
Right.
Some Sheffield Wednesday fans love him. Some Sheffield Wednesday fans can't stand him.
Right.
You know he is capable of the spectacular and really special. The problem is you don't see it frequently enough. He is top of all of the data charts, and which is ultimately why he gets in, and he reads a game of football really, really well. I am convinced in a better side, you would get more out of him. If he had gone to Luton, say for argument's sake, in the summer, or you had previously bought him in, I think you're looking at a 10 to 15 goal a season striker in the Championship, or a forward in the Championship. The problem is we ask him to play all over that front line, and he adapts as best as he can. But I think because he is so talented and so technically able, I think you often miss a lot of the good things that he does, and we don't reap the rewards or benefits of it as a result, I think.
It's really interesting because I think that when I think about Josh Windass and I think about how much I've sort of craved us look at going after him, like I feel like it's the terminology that comes straight into my head is flashes of brilliance. Like he has times where he will score a goal and you'll think, bloody hell, how's he pulled that off? And it's one of those ones where I can understand fan bases being divided because those flashes of genius are the things that stick in your mind and the things that create nice memories. But the consistency and the desire to be successful and the desire to have him do that week in, week out, knowing he can do it, is obviously another frustration as well. So I can completely understand a fan base that's thinking along that way. But thank you so much for that insight. I'm sure that'll help a lot of hatters out, because it's one of those ones where we can all follow the league as best as we possibly can, but getting the insight from people that watch it week in, week out is always so helpful. So how do you see the let's get onto our predictions. How do you see an actual scoreline? What have you gone for Luton versus Wednesday, Matt?
I'm hoping for a 1-1 is the honest answer. I personally think it's going to be Luton 2, Sheffield Wednesday 0. At present, if a team scores, we don't come back. So if you get the first goal, I mean, everybody in that away end might as well just pack up and go home, because we just, at the minute, Phil, we just do not come back. I think there was a stat that came out the other week, which was something to do was there was 60 points on offer from the times that we have fallen behind since coming back up into the Championship. I think we've taken 8.
Wow. Okay, that's quite
so it's
damning,
not great.
Isn't it?
Yeah, it's not great. Damning. Yeah, it's not great, and it's the mentality of it, because as we're seeing at Millwall, we concede, and I mean, credit where it's due, Millwall, you know what you're going to get from them, but it's not exactly the most brilliant side. It's a very hard-working, very robust and physical side, but it's not exactly the most in terms of creativity. We conceded 1 and the floodgates opened. I would imagine with the level of quality that Luton have, I personally just think it will be too much for us, but I'm holding out hope for a 1-1.
Okay, all right, that sounds good. Well, with our predictors, Matt, I think I spoke to you off camera before, but we do a thing called the Sluga 6. So the opposition podcasters that I speak to every week are clubbing together and playing with each other to predict for the right to put £50 as a donation to the Luton Food Bank, which is a cause that we're really close to down here in Luton. So the next 5 matches I'm going to ask you for, like I say, try not to be too outlandish. Hopefully there'll be no Bayern Munich 9, Zagreb 2, then we actually have a chance. But if you could give us a few of your scores. So I've got the first match is Bristol City versus Oxford.
I've got a Bristol City 1, Oxford 2 in this.
Matt, our producer for the podcast, there is Dark Horse Oxford, and they are proving to be very, very good. So that's a really quite nice prediction. I agree with you there. The next one is Burnley versus Pompey.
4-0 Burnley.
4-0. Yeah, poor Pompey. And then the next one is Cardiff, who are propping up the table against Leeds.
This I can see being 2-0 Leeds.
That's fair enough. I put this down into the Super 6 before realising who I'm speaking to, so I apologise. I'm going to say United against Derby. What have you got down? You can be as brutal as you like.
21-0 Derby. No, I'm joking. Do you know what? I mean, rivalries aside, that club from the other side of the city had an interesting start. I would feel a lot less confident about them were this November, and they've got a couple of injuries, because I think their starting 11 is very strong, but off the bench it falls away. They'll have too much for Derby, sadly. I can't predict anything more than a 1-0. I can't believe I'm doing that.
Don't worry about it, man. I'll get the pelters. Like I say, I said at the weekend that they didn't play very well, but scored 2 very good goals, and I've been absolutely battered for it. So don't worry. So, the last one is West Brom versus Plymouth.
3-1 West Brom.
3-1. Yeah, Carlos Corberán knows this league inside out, doesn't he? So he's been fantastic. Matt, thank you so much for your time. Before I let you go, do you want to just give a shout out to your socials so that people can give you a follow? Because I watched your post match against QPR, and as heartbreaking as it was to see how upset you guys were, I thought it was absolutely brilliant content. So if you want to just give a nod to your channels so that people can give you a follow.
Yeah, really appreciate it, mate. It's at WTID Pod on all social platforms. So X, we go live every Sunday. It's also on YouTube, and you can find us on all your major podcast providers.
Top man. Thank you, Matt. And that's all from me for this week's opposition preview. Just want to give a shout out to our audio partners, Black Star Amplification and Carry On, for making us sound great. And also our pod sponsor, The Record Shop in Amersham. Pop into Amersham Record Shop and talk to them. They will give you a discount if you mention the podcast, and if you speak to them gently. They've got all your musical needs. But that's a bye from me and bye from Matt. And come on, you Hatters. Best of luck to Wednesday. See you on Saturday. So, Hatters, there you go. Matt thinks that we're going to get a victory over Wednesday at the weekend. He was very, very honest about the state of play for his club, which was great to hear, actually. I really appreciate the honesty that he gave us this evening in that opposition preview. He picked out Doughty as someone that he thinks is a danger for Luton Town. And given the mood that he'll be in after signing that contract, I hope that he's able to put in a solid performance. It's interesting that they speak about Bernard as a quality centre-back, because from all accounts before they've been struggling with keeping goals out of the net. But they've mentioned about Beadle as well as a top goalkeeper. Now, Luton Town, we need Adebayo and we need Morris to start getting on the score sheet. So we can't keep on relying on other people elsewhere on the pitch to get our goals for us. So it's going to be a really interesting one on Saturday. I think we do need to obviously get behind the team. Things weren't great at Kenilworth Road last time out. So if we can get a goal ahead, play to our strengths, make sure that we keep Wednesday behind, because as you heard, they've got a terrible record of coming back. We just need to do everything we can to keep this momentum going, get another 3 points, get a home win, turn the tide and keep it going. So see you there on Saturday, Hatters. Let's get another 3 points.